On those concerns about the number of migrants attempting to cross the English Channel at the moment, two separate groups amounting to about 12 people were picked up today on top of the dozens more who've been rescued in recent days. The Home Secretary, Sajid Javid, has now declared the issue a major incident. He says he has appointed a gold commander as well and asked for daily updates. Well, joining me now from central London is Tony Smith, former Director General of the UK's Border Force. Very good evening to you, Mr Smith. Let's start, first of all, with the Home Secretary's decision to declare this a major incident and appoint a gold commander. Now, of course, you've some experience of that role during the London Olympics. Tell us more about being a gold commander.
Hello, Dermot. Yes, indeed, I was gold for the UK Border Force and the UK Border Agency in London 2012. What this really means for those that aren't involved in this business is that somebody will be given specific authorities by the Home Secretary to take decisions, and in particular decisions around resources, and will be given a dedicated group, a task force, if you like, of resources from not just within the Home Office, but probably with other agencies, including the police, possibly the Coast Guard and the Ministry of Defence. So a group will be being built right now, which will be dealing specifically with this problem and be able to walk towards a problem so that business as usual can be dealt with, by others.
And how autonomously can you operate, or does it always stop with, in this case, with the Home Secretary, who might say no?
Well, we reported when I was doing it every day, sometimes twice a day, to the Home Secretary on what we were doing. But prior to that, I was given what's called an operating mandate, which did enable me to make decisions, Dermot, which you wouldn't really want to bother ministers with every day. So there will be Gold Commander does have specific authorities under an operating mandate that will have already been prepared for eventualities like this. It clearly shows the Home Office are taking this very, very seriously. And they are stepping up our response, and in particular, Dermot, the contact with the French government, because we do really need the support and help from our friends on the other side of the Channel to stop these boats.
And you think that's the key to it, do you? I mean, there's going to be a lot of talk, particularly as we described there, about the Gold Commander and the major incident. But in effect, if these people weren't getting into these small craft in the first place, well, then that would be problem solved.
Yeah, exactly. We've had joint task forces with the French before. We've done that in Calais. We've done that at the mouth of the Eurotunnel. You remember some of the stories where people were burning tyres to try and break into the tunnel. So that we have got some experience of working with this. And I do know from my own experience at operational level, there is really, really good collaboration going on between the Border Force and the French border authorities to get after the smugglers and the traffickers. Now, the National Crime Agency have said today that this is both opportunistic but also international organised crime. So we're seeing two prongs. We're seeing individuals just trying their luck in small boats, but we're also seeing organised gangs behind it, probably taking significant amounts of money from people to put them into boats into what is a very, very dangerous situation on the English Channel.
What's your take, Tony, on why this particular mode is being attempted now, given that there have been at least a couple of decades of attempts by would-be migrants to get over from France into the UK by various means? Why by this method?
Well, there have been a couple of reports in the last 2 years by the Independent Chief Inspector of Immigration and Borders, which have both highlighted successes, actually, by the Border Force. Both in Calais, we've invested a good deal in port security. It's much harder now to climb into the back of a lorry at the port of Calais, which is the traditional route into the UK. And also, a lot of work's been done with the feeder French ports coming into other southern coastal ports where people have been offloaded and detected. So this is another attempt by the migrants, smugglers. They're not going to give up, but it's a much more dangerous and worrying one, and it shows that they're, to me, they're resorting to increasingly desperate methods to get people over here.
But you also think there needs to be some more effort put into dealing with them if they do set to sea, just even on a humanitarian basis. I mean, these are often very flimsy vessels, and OK, we're told the waters are fairly calm at the moment, but it's the English Channel, for goodness sake, and just the amount of shipping there makes it dangerous without any swell in the water.
Yeah, just to be clear, the first priority in these missions is always preservation of life. That will be made very, very clear in the command group. Preservation of life is paramount, and so we will be working very, very hard to preserve life at all costs. The difficulty, Dermot, as you understand, is that once people are on those high seas, A, they're in an extremely dangerous and difficult situation, but B, if they do make it across and they're not returned to France, then others, particularly the smuggling gangs themselves, will see that as success. They will promote that to others that are waiting to come behind them, and you kind of create this vicious circle that needs to be broken.
It's the so-called pull factor, isn't it? But doesn't that occur before that, as we've been seeing in the Mediterranean, and for many years now, that debate about rescue ships patrolling the Med, and particularly from the Libyan coast there, setting sail, not getting very far, just get out of territorial waters, and they'll come and rescue you and take you to a port in the European Union. Do you think that now applies in the English Channel?
Well, it could do, Dermot, and we've seen one today, haven't we? A ship that's been sailing around having done precisely what you described, trying to get into Italy, trying to get into Greece, and finally landing up in Spain with 300 on board. So there is a risk that once people are on the high seas and given the policy, which I think is the right one, to preserve life, that we then bring people into the destination of choice is one that needs to be tested, because if we continue to do that, we've seen the effects of that in the Mediterranean. The only way we've managed to bring that under control is in the Eastern Med, is through significant investment in Turkey and encouraging the Turkish authorities to do precisely what we need the French authorities to do, which is to invest in their coast guard and get after the criminal gangs that are operating there. That's the only way to stop the boats, and I think that's the only realistic solution. And
just lastly, Tony, just to get back to what you describe as the good relationships with the French, presumably at operational level. I mean, do you think that the whole Brexit negotiations, discussions could have a bearing on this, particularly if they turn towards no deal? Won't the French be tended to say, well, look, you're leaving, it's your problem now?
I hope not, Dermot. There are clauses in the withdrawal agreement which suggest that the preservation of cross-border surveillance, cross-border intelligence, all of the things that we do now will be preserved. But as you say, I don't know what's happening with that. I'm not a politician. I would hope that common sense will prevail, that internationally we all need to get behind the border force and the law enforcement agencies at this difficult time to get after the smugglers and stop this so that we don't see any drownings in the English Channel.
OK, I said last question, but I must squeeze this in, Tony. I mean, any chance of you being the gold commander? I don't know, have you been approached? Would you be amenable if you were?
I hung up my boots, Dermot, in 2013. I love the Border Force. They're still good friends of mine. I wish them all the very best in their mission.
OK, well, thanks very much for the analysis. Very good talking to you, Tony Smith, former Director General of UK Border Force.